Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by 3% and Open Letter, in which we take a single book, long, complicated, dense, break it down in a bit by bit, section by section. We talk about it, we make jokes, we digress, we criticize, we swear, all that kind of stuff. As always, I'm Chad Post from Open Letter, and I'm joined by Brian Wood.
Hi, Chad.
Author extraordinaire.
Freezing today.
Yeah, it's supposed to get warmer. It's supposed to get warmer.
Okay.
It's supposed to get warmer, like 40, 45 maybe. So how are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, I woke up crazy early to do all the reading, just be extra prepared. And then my daughter decided to wake up super early with me, so that was fun. I think I'm sleep deprived because I was looking at the the Google News. And apparently there's like stuff going on with finding a host for the Oscars. I haven't been paying attention to any of this really. So I guess they had an Oscar host and he quit because he didn't want to apologize for making jokes about gay people, or I don't know. There's all sorts of just great, more controversy with Oscars or whatever. Who cares about the Oscars?
I don't think Priscilla cares about the Oscars.
Yeah. But anyway, so they're finding a new person, and it's the comedian and actor, and I guess he's a medical doctor as well, Kim Jong.
Oh yeah.
And I read it really fast. I thought it was Kim Jong Un. I thought it was like a joke. And then I started thinking, wait, how awesome would it be if they got the North Korea? All right, for the Oscars this year, we have a North Korean dictator, and he just comes up on stage and just kind of points to things, or he's always awkward and all that.
Isn't there a whole Tumblr of him pointing at stuff?
It would just be him. He comes up and just points to the lectern, and somebody walks over to it and takes that would be the best Oscars ever.
That would be so funny.
So I honestly thought that's how dumb I am today. I honestly, when I looked at that, thought oh wow, that's maybe they're trying to pass them. That's the way to end nuclear proliferation or whatever. We just have them come host the Oscars.
Yeah. And every award goes to that terrible movie about trying to assassinate him.
Putin's gonna do the Golden Globes.
The interview.
Yeah. Maybe we can get Theresa May if she loses her job here soon. This is great. How are you doing, by the way? That's a long thing to say. I think I obviously have not slept enough. If I thought.
Well, dude, I got up at 4:25 and went to the gym, so I think I'm in your same boat. This is the third day in a row and the sixth day out of the past 2 weeks, which I'm up before 5 o'clock for no reason, and just decide then the best thing to do is go to the gym. I'm okay. I'm a little disappointed in the Penn Translation Award long list, of course, because there's nothing that will ever satisfy me, but not really, whatever.
Do you have? I wanted to ask you about that because obviously I looked. I didn't see any open letter titles. Sorry about that.
The fact that Fox is left off there is criminal. The fact that Fox is left off of that and the National Book Awards is literally criminal. It just discounts both awards to the minds of anyone who's actually read Fox. I think.
Well, it's not literally criminal. It's
pretty close. Criminal to me.
There's some book police that come out. How dare you not like Fox? Yeah.
Damn it. You feel like I couldn't have possibly read it.
That's what it seems like.
I know the judges, and I apologize to them. You're all great people. Everyone makes mistakes.
You can all go to hell.
But you made a mistake.
No, that's that part. That's my favorite part of a movie where, with all due respect, sir, you're a piece of shit. You can't just say with all due respect and then say whatever you want after that. That's not the way this works.
No, it is. Yeah, you can totally do that. Same way as you say off the record, and then you can just say whatever the fuck you want. It's totally fine. Off the record. I'm totally off the record right now. We're gonna stir up some controversy today. That's not even the most controversial part.
I'm not starting. I'm like a beautiful piece of tofu. I don't taste like anything. I'll just show up and make things look full.
Fair enough.
I'm not here for any controversy, but I'll bounce. You can bounce stuff off of me, whatever.
I will. I think this is going to get really interesting, actually.
No, but back to Penn, back to translations. You have. I haven't read anything, so I don't know anything. What are some of the ones that you like that are on their long list?
Codex 1962 is probably the only one.
That's a sweet book cover. I like it. Is that the one that's all white with the multicolored typeface, whatever?
And it's going to be a future 2-month review book.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's so good and shown so good. what other books are on there? I know there's one book that's really bad called The Stone Building and Other Stories. That book is bad and poorly translated. And I don't like that. That's on there is real dismissive. I wrote a whole article about it. Anyone wants to read it, go to 3%, search for Everyone Needs an Editor, and you will get the greatest and most. That's the one time that I actually wrote an article where it's like, I do know what I'm talking about. I'm not just a fool. I understand how words and books work. And that one's spot on. So I'm really disappointed that that's on there. But it's only on there for political reasons because she's like jailed by the Turkish government. So like, got to put her on there. It's pen thing, man. It's pen. It's not about literature. It's about buzz and not necessarily quality. It's just about like what looks right.
Is it Jennifer Egan that's doing the pen?
She's the president.
President. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which other books are on here that let's see if I like any of them. The answer is probably gonna be no. But I looked today this morning. I've read 98 books so far this year. Oh no, I'm lying. The Life and Opinions of Zacharias Lichter by Matei Kalinescu. I wrote about that as well. That book's not a great book in the end, but it's a fun book. And it's a lot like Robert Pinget. No one's read. Probably saying this to like a bunch of people who are just nodding their heads blankly. But yeah, no, that book is fun. That book is great. Stone Building, bad. Edward Halfone is good. I did not read Moonbrow. Love, I'm not interested in at all. Trick is bad. It's like book without style.
Was Stone Building that one you showed me some galleys of? You're like, holy crap, look at this. Oh, okay.
Yes. And we looked at those.
I read a little bit of it then. Okay.
Woo! It's
I honestly I can't have any opinion just because I've not read them. So
it's rough. I feel like if the word actually had to do with the translation, that's rough. But it clearly is just because of the political thing. But I'm sure like whatever. I shouldn't dismiss everything, but I have.
Well, it depends what you like in a book, because I mentioned to you briefly over via text about Fox. Like Fox is a hard book to get into, but like for me, it was the smartest book I read in 2018, hands down. Nothing's even close to it. But I mean, it's not something that you just want to cozy up by the fire and read for enjoyment. Or like right now I'm reading Patrick DeWitt's French Exit, which is just this charming, wonderful.
Rodrigo Farzan loves that book.
Marvelous book, but it's completely different than something like Fox, where this is like, I'm getting my ass kicked here. I'm not stupid, but I feel really stupid reading this because she is like writing circles around me right now.
So just as a preview of the article I'm writing tonight about Quebecois literature, and that will include inevitably lots of digressions and disses and various other things. Part of the bit is that if sales are for popular, and that we use sales numbers to determine what's popular and therefore good in that sense, then a word shouldn't mirror that. A word should be something else and should be rewarding things that are complicated and intelligent and might not get the sales, but get the accolades. But we've come to a point in time in which none of that matters. It's just all about buzz, political meaning, and when all the various and wide ways that you want to use political meaning, and if something's already popular. Like if something's popular, fucking on that list. Like never smart. No one gives a shit about like thinking through what these things mean. It's just like,
let's go back to the Oscars, since we so deftly started with an awards.
That's true.
Awards.
This is a good
my gosh,
segue.
It's almost like this was a purposeful thing that I just implanted. Like remember when like in all of cinema, you're gonna give in a given year, you're gonna give Titanic as the best picture. Like it's about a sinking boat with like just two little teens that fall in love on it, or like that's like.
Is that really what it's cinema? I've never seen it. Like I assumed it had something to do with like, I don't know, something big.
It has something to do about buoyancy and cold water and a door that can't fit two people, or I don't know. People still can't get over that.
That's right.
No, but like again, it goes to like why is that the best picture when there's like plenty of wonderful avant-garde, pushing the envelope, difficult pieces of cinema that are making you think, or it's popularity at that point,
so
right?
Here's a legit question. Is there an outlet among criticism, awards, whatever, that actually is trying to promote the value of challenging artworks or more complicated and complex artworks? And I guess I'm chance around question quickly. I assume the Academy would, but I like the academics in universities, but I don't feel like that's true. I feel like they do, but only if it's already antiquated. Like the complexity has to be from 1950 or before, not antiquated, but you know what I mean? Like there's like a new complicated book that's pushing the envelope or doing something. Where the fuck is that getting like any sort of accolades these days?
Yeah, I don't know.
Twitter?
I don't know. Well, the purpose of like for instance, like the Oscars and the Academy Awards is just to have a TV show to sell,
Yourself, your image.
Gillette razors. Like, hey, if we can get everybody in a room together, we could probably sell commercials. You want to do it? Yeah, let's do it. Like,
yeah,
there's no need to a bunch of famous, wealthy, successful people to get in a room together and to clap for each other and give a golden trophy to one. Like, that's ludicrous.
Is this where the phrase circle jerk applies?
So, well, yeah, because it is a bunch of men, and it's for the most part, right? Yeah. So, do books need awards?
And I don't know that they don't matter. They don't sell things. Well, but if that's what matters, it doesn't. And it doesn't. And I think that's the
purpose,
problem.
though, is to illuminate, to bring, right? To me, like, it seems like I see it. Oh, these are books I've never heard of. This is interesting. There's a list. I want to see what the list is. Or, it gives some buzz, but I don't know if it leads to sales. But
no, it definitely doesn't lead to sales. But for a lot of these things, so there's a pairing, like the New York Times Best Books of the Year, or like the finals for the National Book Award and sales. That Venn diagram is pretty close on top of one another, right? And for people who are just like, I'm going to buy one book, they're going to buy that book that like, oh, well, this must be good. I'm not going to waste $25 on something that I might not like. But the New York Times put it as the best book of the year, as a finalist for this award. It sold a lot of copies. Must be good. Yeah. Boom. They buy that book. So it's like the asymptotic curve of sales where like those books are going to sell very, very well and get all those things. But like with an award that's like not going to sell anything, which is every award minus the Pulitzer Prize and the Nobel and the Man Booker, is basically all the other awards. If it's something especially that's in a genre category, it should actually be about quality and not related to this sort of thing. And I know that people out there are like, you're wrong, Chad. All the people are judging it based on whatever. I do not buy that, because we as human beings don't even know our own prejudices when it comes to numbers or to behavioral economics or any number of ways that we're manipulated and misremember things and fuck things up based on confirmation bias, recency bias, all the normal like mental schema biases that we have. So how in the world would you think that any group of people would be able to judge any set of artworks in some sort of objective and unified normal way? It's just not going to happen. Like all the things that play into the back of that will prejudice and taint those awards. And when you know the background, when you know how the sausage is made on all these other levels, none of them they both look boring and flawed. And that's just super disappointing if you're involved in the game in any way, shape, or form.
Well, tell me this then, Chad. How is it that Open Letter has an involvement with Best Translated Book Award, and somehow you won that one?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, super sketchy. And everyone can point that out, and that's fine. Like I'd accept that criticism, but like no one else accepts their criticism.
It was a wonderful book that won. So
yeah, we started a thing that we're not involved in, and then
and the judges picked your book. But
yeah.
Hey, that's something they're going to point to when you're saying what you're saying.
Which is fine. The most involvement that we have is people email me their essays that I've then post online. Patrick Smith runs the whole thing right now. Okay, so
that guy, he's the worst.
He is kind of the worst. Yeah, no, he's not. Hi, Patrick. So transitioning from my ire, in which I'm sure we've lost like 95% of our listeners for that, to a little bit of poetry, I think.
Well, we're reading. It's all about translated, so we're staying in a
somewhat.
Which I love that you have me on here. I don't know anything about translated literature. I think I'm just here so that I can be like that person in the movie that goes, "What's that?" And so then the other protagonist can explain everything. That's me.
Oh, which one should I read? Okay, so I went to the library yesterday and I got a bunch of stuff, including this book that anyone watching can see called An Unwritten Novel, Fernando Pessoa's The Book of Disquiet by, I think it's Tom Kazano, whatever. And that sort of like explains like his take on The Book of Disquiet, which I thought could be interesting, but I didn't look through it. But I did look through a bit of the collected poems of Álvaro de Campos, Volume 2, 1928 through 1935. And I thought I'd just pick out one of these or two that we could read throughout here, just to give us a taste, because we have Soares, whatever. We haven't had Álvaro de Campos yet. So here's one from 1934, which is the same time as like what we're reading right now. They stuck a lid on me, the whole sky. They stuck a lid on me. Such grand aspirations, such mighty plenitude, even a few truths, but they stuck a lid on all of it, like one of those old chamber pots out there in the backwaters of tradition, a lid, which I feel like is fitting with our earlier discussion. Just seems to all go together. So, yeah. So, what did you think of this? I skipped the beginning part, the intro. I fucked it all up like usual. We are covering sections 359 through 393, which in the New Directions edition is pages 388 through 421. And this is our penultimate episode. We have one episode left, which we finally finished this book.
We're gonna make it
9 years.
It's funny. This cover is becoming more and more menacing as it's staring at me. Like, are you gonna finish? You think you're gonna finish? It's just like, stop looking at me, Fernando.
I have a stack on my end table of all the books that I'm currently reading, which is always too many. It's like the book we're reading for work and other things, and things for the weekly posts and blah blah blah. And this thing just makes that pile so much larger that I'm like, get this. We have to finish this because I need that pile to look reasonable.
See, I'm a one at a time reader. I only read one book at a time.
You're a serial monogamous reader?
Yeah, so I'm tried and true to the end, you know. It's part of that tofu aspect of me.
Part of your Catholic background.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this section?
I only see one priest at a time, and when he's done with me, then I'll go to the next one. I ain't one of those other choir boys.
No.
What did I think?
My pastor. Yeah. So did you have any general takeaways? I marked a few sections I liked, but
yeah, no, I think for me generally on this one, I kept thinking like, how does this work in publishing where like different houses can have somebody's work? Because I know it is brought up in Fox as well. Like who's going to take care of my work after I'm done? Like there's always like a family member or a lover or somebody that takes the work and goes from like with a lawyer and goes publisher to public. How does this work that the work can go from different houses?
This is in public domain, I believe, because of when he died. So like there's that, otherwise it wouldn't. So like all those books that are like, but prior to like 1922, but also like certain other books have entered into public domain. And once they enter into public domain, anyone can print them and there's no royalties owed or anything like that. Okay. Except to like, in this case, to the translator, obviously that's a different thing, but for the rights themselves, that's why New Directions and Penguin and Serpent's Tail all can have different editions. Although I don't know if Serpent's Tail uses the same one as this or not. But that's how they can on here. But generally speaking, like generally speaking, there'll be like when you pass away, your estate will take care of your rights. And like, as long as they're still under copyright law, then they would handle like selling it to whomever. And it can be both very beneficial, like how it's talked about in Fox in terms of someone sort of like shepherding a career and helping someone who may not have been the most popular during their lifetime achieve some like grander success posthumously. But can also be like problematic things in which like estates that are like really adverse to signing contracts or like trying to get big deals or like just don't get along with like other parts of their family, and like certain books have been tied up for years and not reprinted or not brought out just because of problems with the estate not being willing to sign off on things. So that can also be like a detriment. Like there's horror stories about that, and like, you know, stories of other estates where like a positive one is there's a woman named Lo Dagerman who is Stig Dagerman's daughter, and he was I'm gonna fuck this up. I think he's Swedish author that. From like the early mid-century, and he wrote a number of books, passed away very young, and he's an incredible writer. And most of the books weren't available in English or like weren't really widely known. And she's made it sort of like this moment of her life is helping bring attention to him and to his books. And she's like tirelessly promoting him, getting events, getting the books issued, making sure that people get them for review, and they're great. Like I wrote a thing about Wedding Worries, the most recent one, not too many months ago, and they're really, really good. And she's like a very admirable and like important part. She's that character. But then there are like other estates that I know of, especially ones in Latin America, where it's like they just like won't go through with anything, so you end up never having access to like their uncle's work, and it doesn't help anyone. There was one that we tried to do a book that did eventually get published, and the estate wouldn't sign a contract with us because we weren't an official university press, and they thought that a university press would be the best way to promote their fathers were.
Oh
It's
dear.
like, oh, yeah, and you're like, oh, this is hopeless. So eventually got published by like the University of Toronto, and I don't know, if anyone ended up reading it.
Should have gone to Nebraska.
Should have gone to Nebraska. I'm doing a thing about Nebraska next week.
Oh really? Huh.
No, in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I've got.
So is there like a date then? As far as I could probably just Google this stuff, but it's fun to hear you work through it.
It depends on where you're from, and different countries have different rules. There is like the Geneva Convention that's more of like the generalized one that everyone abides by. I think it's usually like 95 years now.
I was gonna say, it's like Panama or something, or Hong Kong, where it's like 99 years and you can have this back. Or...
It's like forever, and it keeps getting extended in the U.S. because of Walt Disney was one of the main ones because of the Steamboat Mickey cartoon would have entered into public domain, and so like they keep delaying it. So there are times where like I believe Ulysses was in public domain for a time and may not be anymore, but Dubliners definitely is, and I think Portrait definitely is. So like it sort of shifts at times, but generally speaking, like from anything recent, like it's not going to be in public domain for long time.
All right, so it's like your kids and your grandkids can make some money off you, but after that, like go get a job.
If you're one of the 1.111 or the 0.00001% of authors that make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially after they're dead. Like most authors are just making beer. Most authors are like struggling musicians who are like going to do poetry readings for a free beer.
I just got a check from. I just realized I did an hour-long talk for $40. I was like, dude,
that's solid.
It took me like 3 days to get this thing prepared, and like I made about $2 an hour basically if I come out to the amount of time. This is so wrong. Why am I doing this? This is too much work.
Erase your poetry, man. Erase your poetry on Instagram. I'm
working on it. I'm working on it, dude. So I like this part on section 362, the very beginning of it. It was my first kind of lean in moment in this section. I've always felt an almost physical repugnance for secret things, intrigues, diplomacy, secret societies, occultism.
See, I totally disagree with Bernardo.
The last two, particularly unsettling.
Like, hell no, I'm all in on secret societies and occultism. Those are both fun.
Last month, I went deep into, that's maybe the wrong word to use. I got into Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh, yeah.
Because, it's all about occultism and all that kind of stuff.
I need to rewatch
that. And I think it's actually about pedophilia now that I've watched it a couple times. But
wow.
It's the whole Pizzagate thing. It really is. Like that. It's about like the most powerful people in secret societies, and then like wanting to diddle kids, I think.
Oh boy.
Which this is in here as well.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
But no,
well, I mean,
I forget that those things existed. Like I always think of like this whole thing with the Illuminati, like the internet and those fake documentaries that are on YouTube that people put out, you know, like those 10 minutes, the history of American oil and the Rothschild Illuminati connection, the Vanderbilt University, like, oh, whoa, gotta look into it. Right. I forget that stuff's always been around. Like that's nothing new.
No, yeah, of course not. Yeah, secret societies seemed more prevalent back in the day when you could have like secret societies in a way.
And it was a lot easier to get a hold of a goat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But occultism, man, like all the Aleister Crowley, all those people are back from like the early 1900s, and they're fascinating. Like I find all that stuff really interesting. I read a William Burroughs book recently called the Boy Scout Manual, the revised Boy Scout Manual, about like sort of insurrection and like changing the world so that everyone can fuck happy and like, do whatever drugs they want and like not be held down by like capitalist modes. And the main thing ends up constantly being like, yeah, you can't be happy when you fuck until we overthrow the world government, which, man, fair, got it. But one of the weirdest things in there is that he references L. Ron Hubbard like on 4 occasions and not in a dismissive way, because it was written at like the early times of Scientology and references like the e-meter readings and shit as a way of figuring out if someone's a narc. Like it's a weird like to see that in that context, but I'm all in on that. Like, and you must be too, as a Steph Curry fan who understands very deeply all the lies and secrets that are being hidden from us, such as
it's perfect. Yeah,
take place.
I can't I can't believe that to be true, but I can believe that someone else might. Are all those people mad, deluded? Just because there are a lot of them proves nothing. There are such things as collective hallucinations.
Or as to tie this all together, as Steph Curry says, look into Kubrick.
Or NBA players. Or yeah. No, because there's this new like wave, I guess that maybe always have been there, but of like flat earthers, or now with media being the enemy of the people. Like, you can't trust any information you get. Like there's this haze of kind of idiocy, which I'm obviously part of. I have idiocy of myself in several different avenues, but there's this like it's okay to say things that are just like preposterous, because there's enough people that can agree with you, where you're not like, you're supposed to be mocked if you're like the earth is flat. Like you need to be mocked for that, but there's enough now where like you can't do it.
Yes, so that's similar along those lines. Well, I have a question for you.
Or a moon landing, the moon landing.
So which sports group, like MLB, NBA, NHL, NFL, has the most people who believe in the highest percentage of people believing in these kind of crackpot conspiracy theories?
I would probably say it'd be the NBA if I were to guess.
It feels like it is. Why? Is it because you can smoke weed in the NBA?
They have the most lax drugs.
Yeah.
And I know, like at least with NFL, you have to stay in college for a few years to mature, like
right, that's true.
physically. Yeah. Whereas NBA, you can be like 11 years old. They're like, let's do this. Like, all right, come on in. Like,
and baseball is just all red ass white dudes from they're probably, well, I mean, Trevor Bauer, he's into all that. Fucking Kurt Schilling.
My dad played baseball in college, and there's like just weird locker room stuff within baseball that we don't get to hear about.
Yeah.
Like apparently the cure-all, we're going way in the weeds now.
That's fine, because I'm going to bring this back in a way that's going to blow your mind.
Collective hallucinations, I guess. But there's a culture within baseball where urine fixes everything. Like, oh, my feet hurt. Yeah. I got a swollen ankle, pee on it.
You pee on it, yeah.
Or like your hands, if like it creates calluses, it makes your hands harder, blisters. Yeah. So like there's...
Yeah, you pee on your hands all the time as a baseball player. If you get
they're into maybe medical, like these weird medical things.
Bat boning.
Yeah, bone the bat. You gotta
bone the bat. Like they believe that by using a bone on the bat, it makes it better.
A bovine femur, you do something to the bat to make it hard. Like, yeah, there's like that's like
nonsense.
It's voodoo. They're basically doing voodoo. It's a bunch of guys chewing tobacco, doing voodoo, being racist.
Just hard ass hustle boys. Yeah. Fuck yeah, I love that game.
No, but yeah, I like this idea though of collective hallucination, because it's interesting, because he has his individual dream, right? He's all about being alone and by himself, and then I feel like maybe the reason he abhors this so much is that it's a bunch of people sharing in a dream, and I think that, like, how can that be? There's a falsehood there.
That's interesting. That is interesting. I love the part that relates to that on the next page, same section, 362. But people say there are great mathematicians who make mistakes when doing simple addition. But this isn't a matter of making mistakes. It's sheer ignorance. I can accept that a great mathematician might make 2 and 2 equal 5, but make 2 and 2 equal 5. That could happen to anyone when distracted. What I cannot accept is that he didn't know what adding up was or how to do it. And that is the case with the vast majority of these teachers of the occult.
Yeah.
Which is great. They're related to this. So this is going to get into our controversial section here. So we got a message from a listener who pointed out that we should point out the fact that this book from New Directions claims to be the complete, like, how do they even phrase it? They say the complete edition, but I feel like it even says complete and unabridged, complete and something, right? So the complete edition. Just keep saying the complete edition, complete edition, complete edition, complete edition. Presented for the first time complete and with all the text in chronological order. Now, according to this person, and I can't 100% verify, but it was a reliable source, the earlier translation of this...
You're fake news, then.
I know. I'm not going to give away...
Sources say.
There's sources say. We live in a world in which we don't need facts, so my opinion is valid enough. So, according to this source, this version of the Book of Disquiet from Penguin Classics that was translated by Richard Zenith and published in 2000, I believe initially, and reissued a few times, but there's even a more recent one than this. But this one has everything that's in here plus sections that are not in here. So it's more complete than this. So we automatically like related to like the belief and the all that kind of stuff. I feel like just by New Directions being like, this is complete, this is the edition, I like bought into that as like their marketing of being like, oh yeah, this is the one. Like that's what they're selling. But I don't know that it is. Not to dismiss New Directions or Margaret Jull Costa, but that it feels like that's a little dishonest to say that in that way. And he has in the Zenith one, there are so many sections of this, and it's so long. But like he talks about how he used it or how he put it together and what they did. It includes where's the one I'm doing? Okay, so he included like everything that was possible for inclusion, but there's certain things that were not, that Pessoa didn't want part of it, and that those borders are fuzzy. For example, they exclude the reams of political theory written by Pessoa, nor is there a place for his writings in pure philosophy and literary criticism. But there are a number of stray and unidentified texts. My edition includes about 50 that do seem to belong here. Seem to me, that is. It is impossible to avoid subjectivity when editing and publishing such a fragmentary oeuvre as Pessoa's. Then it goes on to say this, which I think you're going to find interesting. This subjectivity tends to sheer arbitrariness when it comes to organizing this book, whose passages were scattered across the years and pages of Pessoa's adult life. Chronological order? About 100 passages written between 1929 and 1934 are dated, but only 5 during the first 16 years of Disquiet's existence. To attempt a chronology for the undated text on the basis of stylistic or thematic affinities is treacherous or even foolhardy, as we can understand by looking at several dated texts, such as the aforementioned sequel to The Forest of Estrangement, blah, 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 blah. God, an exhaustive analysis of paper and ink types and of Pessoa's handwriting would probably yield a reasonably chronological order, but would that be a good way to publish the material? Pessoa had a few ideas on how to organize the book, but chronological order wasn't one he ever mentioned. It is true that many passages from the final phase were dated, but even then, not the majority, and Pessoa never suggested that these be published as a group apart, separately from the older material. So then he explains how he does it. In this edition, the dated passages from the last phase, 1929 through 1934, serve as a skeleton, an infallibly Sorazian skeleton, or Sorazian, I'm not sure how you'd say that, for articulating the body of the text. The hope is that the older passages, interspersed among the later ones, will at least superficially be colored by the true psychology of Bernardo Soares. I saw no reason to disrupt the chronological order of the passages forming the skeleton, as this makes for a certain objectivity in this otherwise subjective arrangement, but I relegated the dates to the notes, lest readers who skip this paragraph suppose that the passages falling between the dated ones are contemporaneous. Some of them are, but others go back to the 1910s. As explained in the opening essay, the post-symbolist texts, mostly from the teens, are the evidence, the visible dreams that the dreamer talks about in his confessions, and it makes sense for the two kinds of texts to rub shoulders. They complement each other. But the large pieces that he uses, he kept in order. So his arrangement was to take this latter part of the Soares one that were dated and create that as the skeleton, with that being the whole book, and then the other pieces be put within there in a more complementary fashion. I mean, granted, this was clearly a book in which like you could shuffle it and read whatever in whatever way, but that makes a lot of sense to me and raises a lot of questions about the chronology of this book, which we sort of like took at face value again, because most of these things will say like after 31st of October 1914 question mark.
Yeah.
Like they're not as like,
and that goes through all the way to like 1915 with question marks to
1918 question, 1918, 1920 question mark. Like that's a real, like what we're believing in terms of the construction of this book is really interesting in a way. Like it feel a little bit like it's been undercut a bit, and that some of the weirdness of trying to figure out how to read this book might have been alleviated if we had read this edition. Like, I wonder if this has more of a structure to it. And this is the one that I read a long time ago that I have all these notes from in my phone, but I don't remember it clearly enough to be able to say that. But I think it's just curious. I'm curious what you think of that.
Yeah, I think had mentioned before, we thought that this was arranged in a way that would be most appealing to maybe academics,
Yeah.
you know, PhDs studying Portuguese literature, or like hardcore Pessoa fans getting something that's chronological that I've already read other versions. This is a new version, ordered in a different way, a new way of looking at it or something. But yeah, to me, just as somebody coming in completely blind, not knowing anything about any of this, it was a curious way of trying to read the book, for sure.
Absolutely.
And that really became evident when I started seeing like all the false starts on what was the beginning of a different edition. I think you said it was the beginning of the Serpent's Tail, or but I think we mentioned, or I believe I mentioned, it felt a little voyeuristic seeing like the author's notes on this would be a good way to start, and then and then he tries it again, and then he tries it again, and you can see kind of the evolution of, and then it becomes to the point of like, I grew up in an age when there was, you know, no God, or whatever that one was. I slaughtered that, unfortunately, but yeah, it made me think, you know, as somebody that writes, like, would I want somebody seeing my notes and putting, like, you're just supposed to see this wonderful frosted cake. They're like, oh, this is perfect. Look at how like this person's a genius. It's like, no, I'm actually just like anybody else, but I spent a long time on a paragraph, and so it looks good, and it's supposed to look easy, but it's not. Like,
this,
I feel like this is one of those you get to kind of see how the sausage is made, sort of editions.
It goes back to the our talk about awards and stuff, though. Like, he's already been crowned as a genius and as this being one of the most important books for reasons that are evident in various editions and in all the other editions. But since that's already happened, then you can produce this, and and people are like, oh, okay, I'll see like the parts that aren't very good, or that don't necessarily mean as much as they want to, or don't work as well, and that he would have cut out. Now we can see it because it's already genius. If you're encountering it for the first time, that might not be as evident. Like, I wonder if you just read this because you're just like, I don't know who this guy is, I'm just going to read this book. Like, if you'd be like, yeah, this is one of the greatest books of the 20th century, if you'd be like, this is baffling. Well,
like, think about like a film, like something like, I don't know, Blade Runner or something. There's been like 58 cuts of Blade Runner, right? Can you imagine if somebody had never seen it, you're like, oh yeah, you have to see the complete edition. Like, okay, it's like 4.5 hours long, all the and it's all patched together, and you make them watch that, they're gonna be like, that was the longest, most boring. Why on earth would you, like, well, maybe you probably should have watched the director's cut. It's 2 hours.
It actually comes to a conclusion. I mean, isn't the main part of those differences the implication that he's a replicant?
Sure, but what I'm getting at is, if you love steampunk, or if you love cyberpunk, steampunk. Yeah, they've got flying machines made out of copper, and
typewriters that also have steam.
Yeah, if you like cyberpunk, or you're interested in Reaganism with mashing up against sci-fi or something, or whatever, like, you want to watch each cut of that, because you're like me, I'll nerd out on it. I love Blade Runner. But if it's just like the average person that, oh, I like sci-fi, and you give them the like penultimate cut, they're going to be like, what is wrong? Like, why would anybody like this? That's not that is not the introduction to this that you want. Like,
absolutely not.
Maybe look at theatrical cut with the terrible voiceover.
Oh God, right? Yeah, I forgot about that.
Oof. Some people like the Harrison Ford with a gun to his head voiceover. I'm a detective. But no, like, to me, this feels like it's one of those, like, the really big penultimate edition.
Yeah.
But it sounds like your
other one is
the viewer or whatever said that this necessarily isn't. It's just arranged and packaged to sound like that, or
yeah. And so the chronology might be bullshit. But also,
unfortunately, I don't think most people care.
No, I totally don't. But we had to talk about this thing for like.
No, I know. I don't think most people do it, but there are those in the know. I'm not one of the ones in the know that are going to be obviously like salty about that, and it would make totally. To me, I would be salty about it as well. If like, what you call this complete? It's got everything that I already had in the other one. What are you talking about complete? Yeah.
Kind of marketing garbage is this? Seems bad. So this one also, the Penguin one is broken up into two parts: a factless autobiography and then a disquiet anthology. In the Disquiet anthology are all the named sections, so such as Advice to Unhappily Married Women 1, 2, 3. Those are all in a row here. So they're put together in the back. And they're done actually by alphabetical order, rather than trying to make them some sort of chronological thing. But I found a couple things I want to read, and I think that we could do a comparison here that might be really interesting to some of the listeners. First off, I said this before on the podcast, I'll say again, I have this list of notes for when I was reading this before that are just the numbers of the sections I really liked and maybe a phrase about them. But one of the ones is 89 and it just has 3 exclamation marks. And I don't know what this was from 2000?
Section 89.
So section 89 in this book, though, in this not the one we've been reading, but in this one. So here it is. 89. The only attitude worthy of a superior man is to persist in an activity he recognizes is useless, to observe a discipline he knows is sterile, and to apply certain norms of philosophical and metaphysical thought that he considers utterly inconsequential. Which apparently says something about my state of mind back in the day. But more importantly,
back to your Atlas Shrugged days. Yeah,
exactly. Go to section 383 and read the first 2 paragraphs out loud for everyone, because I found that in this other edition.
383. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. See, I'm not the blank person that just. I'll ask the question, and you can.
I haven't read these next to each other. This is all being done live, but I'm curious now.
383.
What would happen?
First two paragraphs.
Yeah.
Okay. It's page 412 in the New Directions edition. 15th of May, 1932. Nothing weighs so heavily on one as other people's affections, not even hate, because hate is more intermittent than affection, being a disagreeable emotion. It tends instinctively to be less frequent among those who feel it. But both hate and love are oppressive. Both feelings seek us out, track us down, and won't leave us alone. My ideal would be to live everything as if in a novel, and to use life as a place in which to rest, to read my emotions, to live my scorn for them. For those with a highly sensitive imagination, the adventures of the protagonist in a novel provide us with quite enough excitement, especially since they are both his and ours. There is no greater adventure than to have loved Lady Macbeth truly and frankly. What can anyone who has known such a love do now but rest and love no one in real life?
Okay, so you could follow along with that one and compare it. I'll read the 2 parts from the same 2 paragraphs from Richard Zenith's translation.
Okay.
Nothing is more oppressive than the affection of others, not even the hatred of others, since hatred is at least more intermittent than affection. Being an unpleasant emotion, it naturally tends to be less frequent in those who feel it. But hatred as well as love is oppressive. Both seek us, pursue us, won't leave us alone. My ideal would be to live everything through novels and to use real life for resting up, to read my emotions and to live my disdain of them. For someone with a keen and sensitive imagination, the adventures of a fictional protagonist are genuine emotion enough, and more, since they are experienced by us as well as the protagonist. No greater romantic adventure exists than to have loved Lady Macbeth with true and directly felt love. After a love like that, what can one do but take a rest, not loving anyone in the real world? Yeah, hot take?
No, not necessarily. There is a little bit different feel and tone for sure.
Yeah,
between the 2.
There's something more chatty about the Zenith one to me. Like, it's a little bit less like where she is. For those with a highly sensitive imagination, for someone with a keen and sensitive imagination, the someone versus those is taking it down a notch for me. And then also like where it says
to rest up is a very you gotta rest up versus
life of resting up, to read my emotions. I like that, in which to rest, to read my emotions, to live scorn. I also, hold on, there's one other part where it's like there's no greater, or it's talking about the adventures of the protagonist in a novel provide us with quite enough excitement, especially since they are both his and ours. And this one has since they're experienced by us as well as the protagonist. I like that better because it's a little bit clearer as to who his is.
Okay.
And then in the beginning part, she has, but both hate and love are oppressive. Both feelings seek us out, track us down, and won't leave us alone. His is a little quicker. Both seek us, pursue us, won't leave us alone. I like that kind of rhythm a little bit too. They're both equally, they're both really good, but there is a difference in his seems a little bit more chatty to me, or a little bit more casual, and hers feels a little bit more staid and a little bit more like elevated.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would agree with that aspect of it for sure.
So I found another one.
Especially in that Lady Macbeth part as well, that it cut quicker with the version that you read versus the Costa version here.
Yeah, which is weird because he has it as 2 sentences. She has it with
hers is a semicolon. There is no greater adventure than to have loved Lady Macbeth truly and frankly. What can anyone who has known such a love do now but rest and love no one in real life?
Yeah, I think I like this version, the Zenith one, a bit. So that should be specific. No greater romantic adventure exists than to have loved Lady Macbeth with true and directly felt love. After a love like that, what can one do but take a rest, not loving anyone in the real world? That's a different sort of sentence.
Yeah.
And with a slightly different, like this one is like, or where is it like, and love, what can you do except not love no one in real life? And this one is saying not loving anyone in the real world, as if that's something that was unattainable, versus in the other one where it's like, we shouldn't love anyone in the real world. Like the Margaret Jull Costa one seems to imply like, after we read Lady Macbeth, what we should do but just rest with love and not love anyone. Whereas the other one seems to be like, after feeling that, what can we do given the fact that we don't love anyone in the real world? Which is slightly different shading of like the persona of Soras. This is really curious. So there's one more that I found from this section that matches. Do you want to read the first paragraph of section 384, the one right after this?
384. Okay. I don't know what time it is. I don't know what, if any, is the truest way of measuring it. I know that the way the clock measures time is false. It divides time spatially from the outside. I know that the time kept by the emotions is false too. They divide not time, but the sensation of time. The time of dreams is also wrong. In dreams, we brush past time, sometimes slowly, sometimes fast, and what we experience is either fast or slow according to some peculiarity of the way it flows, the nature of which I do not understand.
Okay. Here's his version. I don't know what time is. I don't know what its real measure is, presuming it has one. I know that the clock's measure is false, as it divides time spatially from the outside. I know that our emotions' way of measuring is just as false, dividing not time but our sensation of it. The way our dreams measure it is erroneous, for in dreams we only brush against time, now leisurely, now hurriedly, and what we live in them is fast or slow, depending on something in their flowing that I can't grasp.
Yeah, that's very different at the end.
Ooh, yeah. It's curious to see like the 2 different approaches. Like I mean, if I were to categorize them for like my class or whatever, I'd say like hers tends to lean into the philosophical and the like bigger idea, and his tends to be as conversational as possible. Like I wonder, like the emo aspects of this from before, if those would be altered in his, it might not seem quite so like emo like. I mean, they're still there. The emotions are still there, but I feel like this seems more, in some way, more honest and less of a put on. Like I feel like comparing these 2 now, the New Directions one feels more like a put on of a writer trying to do this, whereas the Zenith one feels like someone thinking through something in like a more journalistic way, even more so than the Margaret Jull Costa version.
Yeah, that'd be interesting too to see how they treat the translation of the different heteronyms as well.
Yeah.
If the voice is, perhaps one is trying to make the voice more distinctive, more contemplative, where one
doesn't use 2 voices.
Whereas his trying to be more chatty in one of them versus more.
The Zenith one uses it all as Soras, I believe.
Okay.
And uses the Soras part as the frame, and then works in some of the earlier pieces that we had as a separate character within the larger structure of the Soras parts. So yeah, it's interesting. I think like so I mean,
well, like, I could be again totally wrong, but with this version, to me, feeling like it's set up wonderfully for somebody that studies Pessoa, and it's done as to the best of their knowledge as chronological as possible to read through each one and see the evolution. It would make sense to use a more elevated, erudite type of translation of the work.
Perhaps.
Versus if you're trying to make it more enjoyable for an everyday reading or something of like, hey, you need to read this guy's work, you maybe want to make it more conversational.
I believe there's a newer edition than this too that's smaller, that trimmed it down into like what it might be like as a singular sort of book versus like this still does have like, you know, extra pieces and appendix and whatever. But yeah,
I think both translations are beautiful. They do different things. It's
exactly.
What's your flavor? Do you want it to be, you know, more?
And that's where I feel bad because I love Margaret Jull Costa. She's translated for us, and I think this book is really good. And I think her translation is really solid, and we've talked about it numerous times, and it fits all together. I think I like the chattier version of Pessoa.
Okay.
And I think that's why like I gravitated to this book at that point in time for like all these sections that I liked and all this stuff. Like I just really enjoyed like that kind of chatty, felt very like unpretentious and direct and like that sort of vibe. And this has some of that, but it also has something that's a little bit more staid to me, a little bit more something.
Yeah, no, I felt that as well, for sure.
Hearing you read it is weird too, because like sometimes it's hard to like read the sentences or figure out where the.
Yeah, I'm not a very good public reader also. So.
Everyone makes fun of. I can read one of his poems and it'll sound like the worst thing ever. I know exactly how to do it, but yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's cool that I was able to find like two of those that did match though.
No, that's I think what would be really neat, especially since a lot of the people that listen to this have gone through the translation programs or are into translation, looking at those side by side and saying, why does this one work? Why does this one work? And seeing how both of them are successful. Both of them take slightly different approaches. I mean, that's the art of translation, right? Yeah,
you've made me rethink what I have to. I teach one of the sessions in the spring classes on comparing translations and what they're doing differently and which one you prefer and why, and try and get at like, which going back again to the idea of like of awards is like it's playing to your prejudices that you don't acknowledge. So I could make an argument on a jury that a translation is better. But it's not necessarily better. It's just playing more towards what my vision of what this should be is. Anyone on a jury is like, Fox isn't a book that's a finalist for this award because what we want are things that are easy for people to like get into and read.
there's that.
I mean, that's dismissive sounding, but you know what I mean.
There's that meme that says, I think it's a picture of somebody wearing something absolutely outrageous, and underneath it just says, "It's fashion, honey. Look it up." You could do that with translation, right? Like, what is this word? It's translation, honey. Look it up, like, right? Like, it's up to you. Like, yes, there's good translation, there's bad translation. These are both good translations. In fact, I'd say they're both excellent translations.
Same.
Sounds like. Me, I like leaner. Obviously, I always complain about things being too big, so I'll go with probably something leaner, chattier, but that's because that's my personal preference.
Same thing, versus like the word. So I don't know. It's curious.
But for something that's being put out there as a complete edition, that's like we put it chronologically for you. That translation to me makes sense to go in a direction where it feels more philosophical and a little bit loftier, less conversational.
I can't remember if I've said this on here before, but there's a book by The Unfortunates by B.S. Johnson that New Directions did that comes in a box, in which he wrote it as like, I want to say, I may be wrong about this, but like 32 little sections. And there's one that is the beginning one and one that's the ending one. And all the rest can be read in any order. So you can take these out and like just pick through them. And if there's something like that for this, like say, like, here's the 12 that you read in order or whatever it might be as a framework. And you had a box of all these sheets of paper. And here's like 12 that you could read in order that gives sort of a philosophical arc to this character. And the rest you can shuffle in or not shuffle in, like a Julio Cortázar hopscotch sort of variation. That would be awesome. That's maybe the edition that I would like the most. But rather than binding it, just unbind it. You could do it as a digital book that way, probably, where it'd be like hitting like a random and like having it go to a random part, like in your Kindle, be like, okay, I'm going to read section 1, then random, and it brings you some of these other ones, then back to 2, and then random. There's a whole new way to conceive of the book that I think you could do in the digital age that you couldn't have done in the times where people are binding and printing stuff. It'd be interesting too if you take the more, like, we've used this word too often, like the more aphoristic parts, like the more like those parts, and compile those and kind of make it like the I Ching, where you toss it down on the table and you see what is the wisdom you're gonna, like the wisdom of Pessoa that you get from chance, from it just shuffling out. You can like read what you're Life is an experimental journey undertaken involuntarily.
Yeah. I don't trust women living the dream. We all have a pederast in us. Like, oh dear, I got a really bad shape here. maybe mine's a terrible idea.
Along those lines of like shit that should not be put into print. 371. 371.
It was a different time, Chad.
I know, but so this is begins with the what do I care if no one reads what I write? I write to distract myself from living, and I publish because those are rules for the game. Yeah, and so then right below that, is it not true that a mother, months after her child has died, can laugh again and be her old self? I am not certain that that's something that should be
in there. Post Casey Anthony, that doesn't hold up well, does it? Hey, sometimes
she was in the news again recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I totally forgot about her until just now.
Yeah. Oh, the other part that I wanted to point out that I thought you would really gravitate towards is section 375, in which it says leadership requires insensitivity. Only the happy govern, because to be sad, it is necessary to feel. And then the last paragraph of that one about Vasquez. Vasquez is the same as all men of action, captains of industry and commerce, politicians, men of war, religious and social idealists, great poets and artists, beautiful women, spoiled children. The person who feels nothing has the whip hand. The winner is the one who only thinks those thoughts that will bring him victory, which is what I'm doing from now on. We're going to win every award because I'm only going to think thoughts of victory. No sadness, only happiness and victory.
All right, I got to go pick up my daughter from daycare.
Whip hand times. Yeah, do you have a favorite line you want to recite?
I'll do it very fast.
Mine's really easy.
Go ahead.
388, no one understands anyone else.
There you go. I just got back from flying across the country. 363, the idea of traveling makes me physically sick.
I marked that too.
This was before TSA, man.
Yo, yeah, Jesus. Oh, man. Well, thanks. We'll be back next week with the last pages of this book and wrap it all up.
All right, man.
If we have a guest or not, we'll find out later. Either way, thanks again. See you guys.